Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today, and I am stoked for this one. We got Fran returning, we got Randy returning, we got Evan returning, and we are going to be talking about the legacy of service. I am pumped for this one. You should be too. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. Get your emails whenever we go live, which is, of course, Wednesdays for The Gold Mine and Fridays for The Collective. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, comments, anything at all, by all means, put them up in the comment section and we can hit those throughout the show. Other than that, let's get some intros and then right into the convo. Evan, you're on top. 10 to 15 seconds. Where you come from? Hit us up.
Thanks. Evan Stewart in Red Deer, Alberta, fire service officer, natural disaster rescue technician, military veteran from Canadian Armed Forces.
Bam. I like it. Randy, how about yourself?
Randy Turner, representing Direct Action, based out of Ottawa, Ontario, former military member, and now running a business providing training for law enforcement and military predominantly.
Bam, I like it. Fran, how about yourself?
Hey everybody, Fran Racioppi, spent career in the Army Special Forces as a Green Beret in the United States of America. That makes me the sole American, I guess, on this one here today. I better be careful what I say. Now I'm the creator and host of the Jedburgh podcast.
Bam. And we were just discussing that you were going to be the only American and that you were going to have to watch your P's and Q's. Might have to use some Z's instead of Z's. We'll see what happens. Shaun,
yes.
How's life out in the mountains?
Things are good. Looking forward to this conversation, of course. Nice to see Fran again. Hey.
It's great to be here. Thanks, guys. It has been too long, so I appreciate you inviting me back. I thought I said something. Maybe I must have cursed.
Oh, you always do.
You do say quite a bit, and I noticed you're not wearing the shirt I sent you though.
That's just, because no, it's because I meant to put that on. I was just on another call. Hold on, I'm going to get it.
Okay, we'll watch for that. I'll get this started while you get it all set up now. So I wanted to ask you guys right off the bat, the legacy of service. It can be interpreted in many ways. What is your guys' first thought? Fran, I'm going to hit you first because it looks like you're ready. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm ready. I was putting this shirt on. The legacy of service. I think service means something different to everybody. And when we think about why do we serve and what does that mean, you got to go back to the things that drive and motivate us. And really that comes down to, I believe, a couple of different things. It comes down, number one, to purpose. Why did you serve? Because that purpose was your guiding light. That was the thing when it was cold, when you were hungry, when it sucked, when you didn't want to do so many different things, that you woke up and you're like, hey, I'm going to do this because this is the purpose that brought me here. And that carries on. That transcends military service into your life post-military. The second one is this concept of autonomy. Did I have agency? Was I able to actually have input to what I did every day? And did that drive my purpose? Did I get to have some level of choice in what I was doing and contribute to that mission? And I think the third one is this concept of autonomy, of results. You know, did I get results? Did I have efficacy? Did I actually look at my period of time whenever I served and actually see a result of my actions? And I think that's something we can get into it probably later, that a lot of people struggle with today, given kind of what's going on in the world. You know, was there a result of so many things that we did? But when you put those things together, that's the legacy. What'd you do? How did you contribute? Why did you do it? And was there a result?
Bam. I like it. Randy, what are your first thoughts?
I think the service has a large component, has, an element of togetherness. I think a lot of people get involved with something because they see, it's much more than themselves as an individual, but it's a group formation of trying to achieve results, persevere through tough times, but you do it together. It's very seldom is there anything done in the military where you're solely by yourself. So I think for a lot of people, the motivation is that sense of togetherness.
I'm liking where this is going already. Evan, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, what I want to add to everything that's been said already is I think that a lot of people get into positions of service, military service, public service, for very different reasons. But something that I'd like to focus on for a bit today is when when you're already in a position of service, you're already in a team environment, you're already in the military, you're already in the emergency response, and it wasn't what you expected, and times get tough. When you have to dig deep and get back to the why, like Fran was talking about, it's those people that have full careers and lives of service, and how do you feel? How do you stay in a life of service forever? Because there is a lot of self-sacrifice. There is a lot of giving up personal interest for the greater good, so to speak. So I think service it starts with getting into it because it's enticing, but it's how do you stay there for your life, for your career.
This is already going deep. I'm excited for where this is going next. Shaun, what do you got?
Two things. First one is I enjoy these calls because the three guests right now have got really diverse exposures to their understanding of legacy of service. So I'm going to use Fran as the example, and I could do the same for the other fellows as well. Fran is like talking to all kinds of people all over the place in all kinds of events and forums and venues, and he's meeting a lot of people. He's getting a lot of opinions. He asks a lot of questions. He gets a lot of answers. And so that broadness of exposure on subjects like this, I kind of always look forward to hearing what Fran has to say because he's got a more well-rounded opinion on legacy of service than I do, for sure, because he's meeting more people. And so I think that is kind of a key to the legacy of service is to get context on what it's about. It can't just be a solo journey, as Randy indicated, of course. We're all on a bigger team than just ourselves. But I think that after the fact, after you've served, it's good to be able to contextualize your service by talking with as many other service members as you can, either currently serving or retired, so that you can get a sense of what it means to them, so that you can understand what it means to you, perhaps. So that's kind of my first thought. And then the second piece I'd like to say is legacy of service for me personally was my first career being in the service actually taught me what service means for the rest of my life. So my very first career created a legacy of service for all my other careers. So if I hadn't have joined the Canadian Armed Forces as a young buck, perhaps I never would have understood service to the degree that I do now, nor perhaps would I have engaged in the careers that I did after the fact in order to serve. And so I think that my legacy of service, I was set up to serve through my first service.
We were chatting about this right beforehand, and Evan brought up the fact that when you grow up in the system, it becomes doesn't so much become your life, but it affects the rest of your life, regardless, because you are maturing into a life of service. And I kind of want to go down that road right off the bat in this first question, which is, how do you see the legacy of your service impact the way that you pursue your own goals right now, or even in between your service? But I just want to know. I want to know how you see it in impacting directly every day from now on. Let's hit Randy first. What do you got?
So I think how it affects every day based on the service, whatever it was, the context drives, I guess, where the conversation may go. The context, it really has a lot to do with all the decisions that we make. But one thing that I truly believe to the core of my being that I garnished and gained from serving in the military was when a task needs to be achieved, or we're pushing through the process towards the outcome. Generally speaking, there's people along the way that will help us, will mentor us, will coach us, and then that's a two-way street. So there will be times where we may have a conversation with somebody, maybe of a younger generation or a different demographic, where what we say and what we offer to help them also helps us. So it ends up being very mutually beneficial. And I think the military really helps guide that, especially if you're a young man starting a career in the military. You understand the importance of being able to do your job really well, but also knowing that the person to your left and to your right are depending on you to do your job very well. So it's not just about you; it's about the guys and the people that are around you. So I think that exposure early in military life definitely it transcends very well into any career thereafter. And you see a lot of people too that come from a military background. They tend to be really good team guys. They tend to be people that are willing to work hard and help out and pitch in where, you know, a simple task like sweeping the floor may be overlooked by somebody that had a different upbringing and background.
I could not agree more with that one. Fran, what are you thinking?
When we think about service, I think it's really important to not compare yourself to others. I think that we live in a world right now where comparison to others is like the name of the game. I mean, go on Instagram. You know, like, I mean, I every day I go on Instagram and I'm like, I'm fat, I'm out of shape, I'm slow. Like, look at all these people, and then you have to realize that, oh wait, they're like professional athletes who work out all day, and like I run 2 businesses. So we compare ourselves to others, and it's natural to do that. But I think that when we consider our service and our legacy, we should really look at what we can almost become a little selfish. Like, what did we get out of it? How did it prepare me for the rest of my life, for that next phase? Where did I contribute? You know, the guys brought up the team. Where did it contribute to others? How did I impact others through my service? Because oftentimes we'll see folks, especially, you know, in the military and in special operations, who have done these amazing things and been part of these operations that change the world. And you can very quickly go, well, I didn't do any of those things. So did what I do matter? And, you know, the answer is yes, it did. I was very fortunate last night to go to the Night Stalker Foundation annual dinner here in New York City. And the Night Stalkers, for the Canadians out there, is the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. I mean, those are the aviation regiment that flies American special operators all over the world, and I think, you know, at times probably many of our partners. And they're the best pilots in the world. And in that room were the pilots who flew the guys, the American, you know, Green Berets and Delta Force operators into Afghanistan on October 19th, 2001, and push those aircraft and push those limits beyond anything that have ever been. They're the guys who were in, Somalia in Black Hawk Down, and we've all seen the movie. They were on the Bin Laden raid. You know, I mean, they're sitting there in the room, and you can very easily go, well, I didn't do anything in my service. And that's not true. You did. And you did something that changed your life. It changed the life of others. And so we can't compare ourselves to others. We got to think about, you know, how do we take what we learned and continue that today?
That it's such a great point, and it's something that I know I did for many years, compared myself immediately. But it is something we'd get out of our heads. Absolutely. Evan, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to, you know, how I pursue my goals now based on, you know, my legacy of service. I definitely didn't think as a 19-year-old, having my 19th birthday in a main battle tank in the Arghandab River Valley in Afghanistan, that I would be sitting here thinking about how that would impact the rest of my life, right? So as a young guy joining the military, you know, I had a very different why than I did when I was, you know, getting ready to retire out of the military and figure out what the rest of my life was going to look like. And I had a big decision to make when I got out of the military. I got into private industry for a little while, and I lost my why again for a bit, and that's what drove me to join the fire service and get into emergency response as a civilian. I think that today, there's a lot of in the civilian world, there's a lot of people that have very different opinions on what the military is and what the military provides to people when you're in, right? And I think some of my missions today, and pursuing my goals, is using the good things that I was taught at a very young age in the military to change that narrative a little bit in the civilian world and emergency response. And I find myself all the time talking in ways where I have almost a deja vu, where I've had the same conversation, or somebody's had that conversation with me before, and it always leads back to a conversation I had by some influential person or influential leader that I had when I was in military service. And it's just interesting to listen to these guys talk about their diverse perspectives when it comes to not comparing yourself to others. It's hard not to do that, right? When you sit in a room of individuals having a conversation that are from a different walk of life, or have had different experiences growing up, or maybe haven't served in some level of public service, the conversations are different, and it's hard to not compare yourself to those people.
Again, fantastic point. Shaun, what do you got?
I think that one of the things, because the subject of Night Stalkers was raised, we've had Alan Mack on the podcast in the past.
Couple of
He's a
times.
a couple times. Great dude.
He was at my table
with that guy. Perfect. So, one of the legacies of service is the fact that we get to talk to Alan Mack. And so there's no way that I'd ever be able to talk with Alan Mack unless I'd served. And so, sure, if I was standing on the sidewalk as a civilian that had never served, perhaps I could strike up a quick conversation with him for 10, 15 seconds. Alan's a really nice guy. He'd probably put up with me for maybe 60 seconds. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't speak his language, So the point was just raised that sometimes when we have conversations with people, the words that are coming out of us are like gems of wisdom that we picked up when we were a young buck from someone who was much wiser than us. And we've clung to those wisdoms throughout our lives, shaped them, tweaked them, maybe even got rid of some of them. But a big chunk of my wisdom comes from my military career. And so I can talk with guys like Alan Mack nowadays because of that, because we have a commonality of language, of not the exact same experiences, but we both know the IMPs that suck and the ones that don't. And just that simple fact alone is enough to create a bond that is stronger than just standing on a sidewalk as a civilian, looking at the guy like Alan Mack and saying, "Hey, I got a question for you." And that'll only last 15 seconds. So again, the legacy perhaps is that moving forward for the rest of our lives, we have this eternal, almost language bond, this eternal service bond, this eternal ability to communicate with like-minded individuals who've served. That in itself is a gift that I think is probably the biggest legacy for me.
Yeah, I want to go around again because this was just fire. Fran, I saw you sidle up to the mic there. Nice shirt, by the way. What do you got?
Yeah, I got it. I think what you said, Shaun, is actually a really good vignette, and I know you said it a little bit in jest that a guy like Alan Mack would give you 60 seconds, and you would lose. You'd be able to run. You'd run out of things at about 15 seconds. But if you flip that, so many of the folks who have done some of the most amazing things are the most ordinary and humble people that you'll ever meet. And they are going to give you the 60 seconds. They might give you 120. And thank you for what you did, because those folks understand the value. I think it would be worth it to invoke, in the U.S. Special Operations, we have the 5 soft truths. And the 5th one of those it's to the effect of that special operations can't exist without the support functions. And so even though you might be the cool guy who gets to all the glory and is, the tip of the spear, right? You didn't get there without the fueler who put fuel in the helicopter, or the maintainer, or the armorer, or the logistician, or the person who worked in the chow hall. all of those people matter in the journey to do the things that you got to do. So even though it might at times be easy to go, well, I did all these things and I had tremendous impact, and that person's just a fueler. Well, your vehicle or your aircraft didn't go anywhere without that person. Sorry, whether you want to think you were awesome or not, that's the reality. So it's really important to think about that, and I think that those people think the most about that.
I was just thinking while you're talking there that it at a micro and a macro level, it's all about the team, right? That's such a key point in that, is that in a small interaction between you and me in a doorway or whatever versus your entire regiment integrating within the entire military complex, of how that actually projects national power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like regardless of how you look at it, what lens you're looking at it, it comes back to working to the team. And I love this. Randy, got any thoughts?
I couldn't agree more. It takes a team to have a true effect, and I'll echo Fran's statement earlier. I've been very fortunate to be, inserted by the 160th on multiple operations overseas, and to both your guys' point, yeah, I get to do the job. That's what I loved to do, but I wouldn't have been able to get there if it wasn't for pilots and servicemen and women that had the capability to do that. And I think any capacity of the team, those interactions that we have, words have meaning, and they can be very powerful and influential. So whether you're the cool guy with all the expensive kit and equipment hanging off your body, it takes somebody to procure that. It takes somebody to enable those things to even come to fruition. So I think elements of respect and having those, although they may seem like meaningless conversations with people who are in a support role, there's a lot to be said about a value of respect when the person is thanked in a genuine thank you for what they do. So yeah, without the support and specialists, the guys that are actually doing the job wouldn't really be able to do their job.
It's such an important point. I'm loving this. Evan, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think a life of service makes you realize true value, and that's, that can go many ways, but listening to Randy and Fran and Shaun talk, it's, what I grabbed a hold of there, and I truly believe is that a life of service, if that's what you want to do, if that's what you're going to get into, you're going to come out of it with understanding value, true value, whether that's value in people, value in the team, value in the mission. That's what I've learned the most, I think, out of a life of service is true value. And I take that every day now, whether that's family time, whether that's, making myself better so that I can better support the people that I lead or support. True value is something that I have learned through a life of service for sure.
That I got no words for this. You guys are just dropping bombs left and center. This is fantastic. Shaun, what are you thinking?
I think that I agree with everything that is being said, and so there's very little I can add. Maybe just to play around with what Evan just said, service does teach you those things, to understand and respect how much we're supported by all the people around us. But it's a reciprocal thing. I think that when you start to understand that the team is putting out so much for you to do the thing that you've got to do, if you're a decent human being, then you're going to respect that by putting out exactly what they're giving you and some more. And so for me, anytime I'm in a team, like this podcast is an example, like I'm giving it my best. And so if I was to give it anything less than my best, it would be disrespectful to the people who showed up as part of the team. And that's how I've run my life. And so to get involved in a good team or a bad team is almost neither here or there to me. Because once I'm on a team, I'm going to freaking give it. I'm going to give it my all. And if it's a great team that I just joined and I'm the underperformer, and I'm going to use loose terms now, if I'm the underperformer, then I'm going to freaking pull up my socks and pick up that pace to an insane degree so I feel like I'm not letting anyone down. And if I step into a room and I'm the man, whatever that means, then I'm freaking still going to pick up the pace because I want to set the standard, the demonstrably high standard that perhaps I'm capable of within that room. Now, those are theoretical models. Both of them just indicate that the moment you're on a team, it's about performing more than if you were just by yourself. And so that's a great legacy to be taught, that the moment you join in on something, you're there to give her more than you would have if you were just standing off on the sideline by yourself.
And this is so awesome, but the ability for us to do all these things, it's awesome. And it does attract people early, right? Young men look at the military and they're just like, man, that looks awesome. And for you, it's Tuesday, right? Sometimes it is. And I just want, there's some comments here I want to hit on, and then I'm going to go into this question, but that we're going to get into this. I'm loving it so much. So quickly, John, Morning Squad, hit us up. Salty Jinx, good day all. Good to see you. Great to see Randy back. Good to see you. Salty again. John jumped in here. He said, I am like Warrant Officer Taylor. I became aware of my service in my early days of the military. It also molded me in a lifetime of service, military, Coast Guard, policing. Each service enforced my why. Salty jumps back in. He says, I think sometimes we enter into service with a lack of understanding or a different idea of what it is till we have to find out what it is to us. I think that sets the foundation of how we continue to find service in our futures and for ourselves. I think this sets the ground rules for us, for sure. Now, to that point, though, it can drive ego like mad. And we all know them, right? We've all met them in times of our service. Sometimes it was us where, yeah, we're the cool guy. We are the cool guy, right? And then there's friction points there. So I'm wondering how you guys manage those particular times in your own life, in your own service, where maybe you thought you were a bigger deal than we actually are. Let's see where this goes. Randy, I'm gonna hit you first. What do you got?
Yeah, self-introspection is important. Like, it's very easy to say just remain humble, be a humble guy, but it's something different to be aware of yourself. And sometimes we'll have a good week and maybe we're feeling a little bit inflated. When you're operating with high performers, there's elements of humility that will be around every corner. So in everyday life, whether it's in service or otherwise, we'll have good days and bad days. We're humans, just like everybody. We're going to say things that maybe were out of context, or maybe we shouldn't have said, or we're going to do things that maybe that could have been performed a little bit better. At the end of the day, if we feel like we're becoming a little bit inflated, that's the idea. The way I look at it anyway, that's the idea. That's the time to remain humble and say, listen, that might have been really good, but there's still room for improvement. Where being satisfied with the performance is good, but I would say be okay with it and know that there's always areas for improvement, and seldom do we have anything really formulate into what could sometimes be referred to as perfect. So in other words, I don't believe in the word perfect. I don't think anything is perfect, but we're striving for excellence. When we start getting good at something, that's the time where we ask questions, figure out ways that we can get a little bit better. In terms of understanding, I agree with one of the comments that was written up there. Sometimes we have an idea of what we're getting into, and then the reality will sometimes shatter those perceptions of reality. And that's the time, again, for us to ask questions and tap into why are we here? What is it that we're trying to achieve? And can we get better in the process?
That's fantastic insight. Evan, what are you thinking? I saw you nodding your head there like, oh yeah. What do you got?
Yeah. I think everybody's going to have times of their life where they think they're better than they are. I tend to believe that folks that, we all know who they are, the folks that walk around with a big chip on their shoulder and have this ego, think they're the cool guy. I truly believe that they have either not had a humbling experience in their life, or two, they've had one, they haven't realized what it was. And that goes back to Randy's point about self introspection, self-awareness, all of these things. I'll tell you, in the fire service specifically, where I live now, we get put up on this huge pedestal by the public, right? Oh, it's the fire department. They're amazing. And we are afforded that respect by the public, because many people before us laid the bricks. But I turn to my left and turn to my right every day and look at EMS and police officers and see how much they, in a lot of cases, are not afforded the same respect by the public for various different reasons. In some cases they are, in some cases they aren't. But a fire service specifically, we get put on this pedestal, and I see it every day where people take that ego and they run with it. But I also see every day that we don't win in the fire service every day. We lose. We roll up on fires and we don't have successful outcomes. We roll up on car accidents. We don't have successful outcomes. And it's not for a lack of training. It's not for a lack of trying. It's for the sheer reality that you're not going to win every time you roll out the door. The people that are quiet professionals, the people that really build on themselves and support the team more and more every day, are the ones that recognize those humbling experiences and understand that you can always get better, to Randy's point.
Yeah, could not agree with that more. Fran, what do you got? I saw you cheering in the background.
Yeah, so there's a few things I think that are really important here. And number one, if you ask somebody if they ever fail, I mean, this is a common question that comes up in job interviews, right? Well, tell me when a time I fail. And then people kind of make up all these excuses about, oh, well, I'm going to transition that into a time that I failed, but I'm going to make it look like I work really hard. And, I did something else really good because I failed. Own the failure. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear about that. And then so by actually not, I think what you said is that they don't realize that they failed. See, that right there, we've got to be able to stack those up. It's truly, when we talk about humility and define humility and the ability to be introspective and understand that there might be a better way, that we're not going to get it right all the time, is really when we can stack up those failures and go, hey, I failed in this, and this, because we really should expect to fail. And when we get to the point, it's kind of like we talked about the legacy, but and someone said, when you get really good at it, you need to be thinking about what's going on. When we get to the point when we think we're so proficient at something that there can't be another way, we better expect to fail at what you're doing right now, because there's always a better way. You just haven't thought about it yet. And you're not demonstrating curiosity and thinking about it. There's always a better way to do something. And so this perfection doesn't really exist. And there are a few things in life that are going to humble you at some point. And I love them because it happens to me all the time, regardless of how good you think you are. And then it's about just sitting there and laughing and learning from it. And it's driving a trailer. Okay. And docking a boat are first world problems, right? But those things, if you ever do those things, it doesn't matter how good you are, you're gonna screw that up in front of a bunch of people one day, and then that's gonna make you think about all these other things. And so for me, I always think about those moments when I'm sitting there on a ramp or at a dock in front of a group of people, and I can't just get it right. And I've done this 1,000 times perfectly. And then a week later, I'll be in a business meeting, about to go off on something, and think about being unable to back the trailer down the ramp and go, okay, just be quiet.
I love it. Shaun, what do you got?
Yeah, I think everyone's been in that moment for sure. And it's brutal. And why is it brutal? And I think it's because, through the driver's window, you see all the bikinis and all the guys with the beers, and all eyes are on you. And technically there's no pressure in that moment. I mean, whatever, who cares what the outcome is? It's not like it's saving the world, but it's all ego based, because all the beer is frozen in that moment. And so it's a beautiful moment because it teaches us a lot about ourselves. You can see a lot of lessons in humanity in that moment. And I don't care who you are, I don't care what you've done, but that boat ramp moment is a thing, and I think everyone should experience it. That's for sure. So, feeling like the cool guy, how do we manage our ego? Well, I think for me, when I joined the military, I thought I knew how to scrap. I'd I'd been doing martial arts for a year and a half. So I can't believe what I used to think. But you know, it kind of made sense that I used to think that I knew how to scrap back then, because just before I joined, I had to, and I've told this story before on the podcast. I'm not going to relay it. It's quite a classic. Chance knows it reasonably well. I pulled up on my motorbike with my girlfriend on the back. I had my long flowing hair because I hadn't joined the military yet. Had to meet up on top of this hill at a fixed time because this guy threatened to defend his honor for his school, Kung Fu. And I just started Muay Thai and Shotokan karate. And he challenged me to a death match. A freaking death match on top of the hill at a fixed time. Anyway, the story is classic. I smoked this guy and I thought, now I'm the man. And so I joined the military and I thought, I know how to fight. And so, of course, there's a lot more to that story. Now, the action moment for the correction of the ego. So I was chirping in basic training. We hadn't been in basic too long. There was this guy, he had 100 pounds on me, and I just chirped at him a bit too much. I got a chippy side to me. I like having a bit of fun. I like poking. But don't poke the guy who's got 100 pounds on you. Because one day he just looked at me and he said, put on the gloves. Someone had brought some boxing gloves. And I mean, we were always fighting anyway, but this one was like a call out. And so I was like, all right. So we're both pulling on the gloves. We're just outside of the shacks, back of the shacks. There's the big ring formed around us. And I just looked at him. I said, okay, so what's the rules? And he said, so we're gonna box. And I said, what? We can't kick? And that's all I had in my bag at that point. I knew how to kick. I had a good soccer kick. And anyway, this guy smoked me so hard that as I was laying on my back with the Tweety birds floating around my head, I didn't know what had hit me. I'd never been hit that hard before. And so I got up and I realized, I guess I don't know how to fight. I'm not a cool guy anymore. And so that has been my life. Right about the time that I think I'm doing something reasonably well, someone smokes me right between the eyes with whatever it is, with a technical ability, with a technology ability, with an ability to communicate better. I've been punched so hard and fallen on my back so many times through all the various vectors of me showing up thinking, oh, I got this. And then I don't. But I think to be knocked down, you've got to put yourself in a position where you might be knocked down. Yeah. And so I've never played it safe, or I could have played it safer. I'll say that. So my penchant to like push my own pace has put me in positions where I've been smacked down, but I've learned a ton through all of those moments. The hundreds of times that I thought, oh, I think I got this. And then you don't. And hundreds of those moments later, it does temper your ego. And by temper it, I mean, teaches you how to understand it a little bit better. The extremes of it, the times when you're flaring out too much, and the times when you're sitting back too much. We all have to learn how our cool guy ego works so that we can sometimes get ourselves in a little bit of trouble so that we can get smacked down and learn that lesson.
I think, I'll just add one thing real quick. I think too, Shaun, like the best people to give you that let's call it constructive criticism of your behavior is when they're actually like the closest people to you. Not to promote violence, but like the worst ass beating I ever took, excuse my French Canadian, was from one of my best friends, who I was mouthing off, and he just turned around and just destroyed me. Like, I mean, I couldn't go to school. I couldn't go to school. I was in high school. I couldn't go to school for like 4 days because like I couldn't see out of my eyes and face. My face didn't look like my face. And it's just something I remembered like my whole life, which was, hey, if there's people that care about you, like, it was almost like this person like cares about my behavior so much that they're willing to do this to me to like get it right. Like, you have to just internalize that and go, I need to make a change.
Yeah, I love the fact of getting smacked upside the head, even as like there again ranges of scale, right? Somebody comes up and smacks you up the backside of the head, and you're like, man, smarten up. You can either learn that lesson quick, or you can keep going. It's gonna get worse. And I'm wondering, to your point, Shaun, like you had a success, right? You went to the death match, you won, you were successful, and then you weren't the next time. And I think this is kind of at least where my mind goes with this is that your definition of success changes, right? Because you won. Aha. Now I'm just gonna do the same thing again. Nope. No, you're not. Well, okay, now I've lost my understanding of what success is now. And I'm wondering if you guys saw it as such through your career, through your life, how you've hit those moments where your definition of success changes. You think that's accurate? I'm gonna come to Evan first on this one. What do you think?
Yeah. I'll go back to fire service again, right? Like you do 1,000 calls in a year and you win on 800 of them per se. The last time you went to that house fire, you stretched the line in, you got in there quick, you got the fire knocked down, everybody was cheering, hoorah. It's a good feeling. You won, right? You kicked the fire's ass. The next time you do the exact same thing in a similar structure and one little variable changes and you get knocked down and you lose. And I think as we win and win and win, and Shaun is right, when you're in a life of service, you get those opportunities. They're in front of you. If you take them, that's a personal choice or not. But those opportunities are in front of you when you're in a life of service, where you get you're on the tip of the spear. You're on that precipice where you're going to win or you're going to fail, and there's not a whole lot in between. And as you win in those situations, and you win and you win and you win and you win, I find that it's very easy to get complacent in situational awareness and complacent in self-awareness. That whole normalization of deviance piece. You're like, oh, I did that last time and I won. I did that last time and I won. At some point, you're going to lose and it's going to hurt. And you have an opportunity to learn from that lesson. Sit down in the corner and laugh with the buddies, and hopefully you learn something from it. But it does humble you. So I don't know if your definition of success changes, but I think, in my opinion, it's you start to get complacent in your self-awareness and in your situational awareness until something knocks you down and says, hey, wake up, start being aware again.
That's a fantastic angle take on it. Randy, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's a great point Evan made. I think sometimes we, will, depending, I guess, the personality will drive it. But when things are going well, people will stay in a safe zone, because in that safe zone, there isn't anything challenging what it is that we're doing. So it's easier to, execute a certain skill or a task because it's familiar and it's worked, and there hasn't been any challenge, external factor that's challenging why we're doing it a certain way until it does happen. And then if it's that situation that you haven't prepared for, then now we're kind of playing catch up. We're on reactive mode to something that we didn't foresee happen or chose not to prepare for, because everything up to that point was, all systems to go. This is a normal activity and I'll stay in the safe zone because this is where I know I'm going to be successful. I think there's an element of courage to push outside that comfort zone and flirt a little bit with, the discomfort of the realities that could unfold. I know there's a study in sports psychology that suggests confidence is the number one contributing factor to optimal performance. How do we get confidence? Typically, we get confidence through repetition. We do stuff over and over. We get really good at it. So our confidence will grow. If we do not dabble with a alternate solution or another way to kind of skin that cat, then we're going to defer to what we've done in the past. So I think that's where hiccups will sometimes, show their face and come to the surface. So I guess where I'm going with that is, it's good to be confident for sure, but just know that, any deviation from a variable that may change could be, the stick in the spoke, so to speak. So it's more optimal for us to be thinking about those contingencies of what potentially could happen in situations that are very familiar.
I would take that one further too, and I would say that when you talk about confidence, what's the difference between confidence and arrogance? Confidence is simply arrogance with humility.
I like it.
And I mean, think about that for a second, right? Because what makes us successful, and what makes elite performers successful, and whether they're in the military, they're athletes, they're in business, is the repetition. It's the confidence comes because they've done this so many times that it's second nature. And it's the concept of, we're not going to train until we get it right. We're going to train until we can't get it wrong, which then builds that confidence that you can't get it wrong because you've done that so many times. But if you now in your mind are you have the attitude of, well, I can never get it wrong. Well, now you're going to get it wrong. That's arrogance. But confidence is, I've prepared for this via these 12 steps to this standard every single time. And every single time I go to execute it, I'm going through my progressive 12 steps in the exact same fashion. I'm thinking about every single one the way I need to be successful. Because if I don't, I'm going to fail. So the process still matters. The failure comes when we don't consider the process and we focus on the result. Well, I always get a good result when I do this. I'll just go through the process. But if you don't think about the process and the sub steps, that's when you fail.
Yeah. And one thing I would add to that too, I agree. And if you were to ask people, oftentimes you hear, catchphrases and cliches of, the process will help us with the outcome. And people will often say, yeah, the process is more important. But if you ask people to explain the process, you'll see a hiccup or you'll see a delay in response, unless it's a conscious thought. If you consciously think about what is the process that's going to enable us to achieve that desired outcome, now you can see the thought process of the potentials that could go left or right become a little bit more of reality.
I'm loving where this is going. Shaun, you got any points to add to this?
I do. So my definition of success is different from the time I joined my first career in the military till now. And I say that because the definition has gained more nuance. So when I first joined, we'll keep it simple and consider that my idea of success was binary, win, lose, or on, off, up, down. So really not much to look at. But as the years progressed, I started to have enough successes and enough failures across enough of a timeline that things became more categorical, or I could categorize as kind of a success, sort of a success, not really a success. That was kind of crappy. That was a failure. And so as you move through those levels through the years, you gain more and more nuance until what arguably in the first year would look at as simply as not a success. 10 years later, you can look at it and think that was quite successful for the following reasons. And now you've got nuance. And so my definition has changed over time because of time. I continuously try to understand success and failure by constantly seeking it. I seek failure, I seek success. And over the years, I get better understanding. So my footprint of success is way bigger now than it was when I first started to understand these things. And by a bigger footprint, I don't mean I'm oh so successful. What I mean is my understanding of success is so much larger now than it was back then. Success, I think, currently is driven a lot by social media through celebrities and influencers and personalities who are driving down an image of what is success. So, Fran bought his boat for a variety of reasons, but he probably thought it through. Whereas there will be people who Well, you didn't think that boat ramp section through very well. But there's people who will buy a boat for no other reason than they're led to believe that that is a mark of success or a sign of being a successful individual. So a lot of success can be driven kind of top down into you. And if you're not thinking it through properly, if you're not thinking through the social construct of what success is, then you might find yourself at some time in the future chasing paths of success that feel contrary to who you are or feel inauthentic to what you want to become in the future. So success can be almost a slippery slope leading to false success. So you always have to keep your eye on it for sure.
It can go so many different ways, and I love that you brought that up, Shaun, and the fact of, if you seek success to a degree, it can lead to a lane of false success. I'm really digging this. I'm wondering, because a life of service requires a lot of self-sacrifice. You have to give up on a lot of things that you want, and all of the things that we're talking about it's kind of uplifting part of service, and the fact that we have all these great things and we can you gain confidence, you can gain all these skills and all that stuff, but you also have to give up quite a bit as well, because you have to give yourself to the team, you have to serve the team itself. And I'm wondering, on the flip side of all this, when I guess when did you even realize, or if you did realize, that you can lose yourself to that sacrifice? You can lose yourself to that team. You don't, you give to the point that you are, I mean, we all know guys that have off themselves since leaving the military or while they were still in, right? You can give yourself to that degree. And I'm wondering, in moments of that kind of self-sacrifice where you're willing to just lose yourself completely, how did you maintain yourself to keep going? How did you keep pushing forward, to keep working on the difficult parts of life? Fran, I'm going to come to you first. What do you think?
I think you have to go back to the purpose. I think that becomes the driver, right? If you don't have that purpose, then that's where you start getting lost. I mean, that's what's ultimately going to be that guiding light. When we talk about self-sacrifice and what you're willing to give up, look, I would argue that most don't think about it until it's retrospect. Especially, if once you get into that world, and it doesn't matter what you do. If you're a tier 1 operator with the beeper, and you're running out the door every time that your nation calls, and you're gonna hop on somewhere, and you're gonna leave your kids' sporting events and the movie theater and all this stuff to go do that. You're that's going to hit you later in life when you're going to look back on those moments. I think about all the deployments and training I had when my daughter was 0 to 4, and I was like never there. And in the moment, it's not very few people. I'm not saying nobody thinks about that, but very few people kind of consider those things now. I mean, those experiences that I had and those friends that I have who tell those stories, that impacts me now, because as I try to grow my business, as I try to grow my show, and both of those are full-time jobs that require my 100% effort, they're now, because of the experiences that I had of my service, the legacy and the impact of my service, I'm more attuned to know, like, hey, you need to walk out of your office right now and go sit down with the kids. Oh, I just realized that my son came in here for the 3rd time and asked me to go do something with him. Like, probably I should do that. but that comes from the experience of the past. And I think being mindful of that is very important. But also, I would argue you got to be realistic. I mean, if I sat here all day long, and yes, I'm 100% invested in growing these two things that I work so hard to push and try to. I don't even know, Shaun, what success looks like in them, but I'm trying to get somewhere better today than I was yesterday on them. But I also can't be like, oh, well, every time one of my three kids comes in here and asks for something, I'm going to stop what I'm doing and go do it, because you can run in circles all day and you're really going to get nowhere. So that's the balance that has to get struck. And there's no right answer on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Evan, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, no. The last comments resonate with me, right? Like I had a kid really young when I was in the military. Same thing. I remember coming home 10 months later, and he was walking and talking and scared of me and didn't know who I was, right? And that was probably one of the biggest catalysts for me for deciding that I needed to find some balance and self-sacrifice versus my own personal ambitions. But I also think that if you know that why, that self-sacrifice can also be it can also be a positive too for your own self. It can almost be selfish if you're not careful. But when you have those pure moments of joy, when you see the fruits of your labor and you've spent all this time and energy putting it into something, and you see how it positively impacts the community, the mission, the team, whatever it is, you feel good in those moments, right? So it is hard to sit back and say, well, I have to stop putting so much time and energy into something because I have to, combat all these other pushes and pulls in life. When you start feeling those good feelings of success at the end of the day, after you've put in all this time and energy and you have self-sacrifice, right? It almost works right into your own personal ambition. And I totally agree that there's no right answer there, and it is very retrospective for myself. I tend to not notice it in the moment, but I notice it later, and it's pulling on your psyche, I think, and it's difficult to find a balance.
Yeah, this is a challenging question. I'm asking it myself. Randy, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, I do. It's about sacrifice, and the timing is impeccable. As I look at the clock, like I knew we were going to have this discussion, and I'm loving every minute of it. It's a great panel, great topic of discussion. But I've got to sacrifice right now this conversation to pick up my daughter from school. So I got to bounce in about 5 minutes, and given the time, in the fact that I'm running a business and I'm not home a lot and I'm on the road a lot, these moments are precious where I get to pick my daughter up. I don't have to. I could have organized something, but I get to be the one that's going to pick her up because I know those moments are so few and far between. I unfortunately have got to sacrifice this great conversation so I can be present with my daughter. So we're talking about sacrifices, service, time in uniform. There are multiple birthdays that we miss, Christmases that we miss, and we sacrifice the things that are true to us and to our heart. And I don't think that will ever stop. I think if we're trying to be ambitious and we're trying to achieve certain goals, we are going to sacrifice along the way. I guess I would caveat that with, very seldom is anything forever. So we sacrifice something now, we can pick it up potentially a week from now or 2 weeks from now, as using arbitrary numbers. So I don't think anything has to be forever. I think there will be opportunities that we create for ourselves, and there'll be opportunities that are presented. It's up to us to be aware when they do present themselves. What are we going to do to capitalize on it?
I'm digging this, and yeah, if you got to jump off, by all means, appreciate. You got any final thoughts? Anything you else want to share before you jump off the call?
I would say, well, first, thanks for having me, and it's great chatting with the guys on the panel. I think for the listeners that are enjoying this discussion, what I would say is, as closing remarks, is there's going to be times in life that we've got to dig deep and persevere through what we don't know yet. So when things are difficult, it's very easy to, take a left turn when things get difficult, but instead push through just a little bit longer, a little bit farther, and you may be pleasantly surprised what's, through that tree line, so to speak.
Man, I like it. Appreciate you being on with us, brother. It's always great to talk to you. We'll get you on again. Don't you worry.
All right. Take care, guys. Thanks a lot, guys. We'll be in touch.
Peace.
See you, Randy.
Thanks.
Shaun?
That was a great message
Mm.
that he had on the way out there that I think is worth, reinforcing that, if you got a dream and you want to do something, don't quit. Don't quit, but also understand you still got to put the work in. Hope is not a course of action. So you can't just hope that it's all going to work out. Yes, like I guess strategically you have this hope that it's going to work out, but that process still has to matter. That diligence, those steps 1 through 12 to get to this result still has to happen every single day. Or you won't get there, and you might not get there even if you do all those things, and then it's kind of just wasn't meant to be. But I think it's really important that you don't quit. I mean, I there's a lot of things in my life, including like my show that I thought last year at this time I had to pack in and quit, and just found a way to keep pushing every day, and it's I don't know. It's like you find these little wins. You find these little wins, and you just do something else, and that gets you to the next day and the next little win, and you keep having those over time, and love that process.
Yeah, breaking it down consistently instead of the large scale massiveness that is whatever, right? The whatever it is you're searching for. If you can just, break those down into smaller steps. I remember doing day by day in certain training aspects of the engineers like to really beat ourselves up when we're going through recruit training, and it can be tough. And a lot of it you just gotta, let's make it through today, or let's make it to lunch, or let's make it through this one evolution, whatever it is. Shaun, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Do so. I think that to the question, I think these things, self-sacrifice and personal ambition, and how to reconcile conflicts like between the two, I think they're self-taught. I think we all learn how to do them year after year after year, decade after decade. My understanding of self-sacrifice when I was 21 is different than 61. And so I've learned different versions of self-sacrifice and personal ambition over the decades. I think that's what we're supposed to learn. You're supposed to pay attention to this and then refine it over years. The only way that you can understand self-sacrifice is to start self-sacrificing. See how long you can do it. 10 minutes, 12 minutes, 27 minutes. Okay, there's your first round of self-sacrifice. How did it feel? What did you learn? Did you like it? Will you do it again? Round 2, you last an hour and a half. Round 3, you last 4.5 days. Round 12, you've been at it for a year. You're learning lessons in every single instance about what self-sacrifice means to you. It's your personal journey to learn what these things mean in relationship to each other. Self-sacrifice and personal ambition. And it modifies, for me, decade after decade. I've learned to play the two against each other. And by play them against each other, I mean, it's not like I'm a puppet master controlling the universe. I'm only controlling me. And that's all I need to do, is control my own understanding of what I'm willing to sacrifice and what I'm willing to chase, or what I'm currently involved in right now. So using Fran as an example, I remember a year ago, and we were kind of talking about, the Fran's podcast. He was working like a dog, and not everything was falling in line perfectly. But if there's anything that I know about Fran, he's in the game, and he's got enough character to push through brick walls to make it happen. And so I was encouraging Fran to just keep pushing forward, not like he needs my encouragement, but I was encouraging him to frickin' smash. And I don't do that for everyone, because not everyone is capable of pushing forward. And so maybe that's a message that I'd like to put out as I conclude this is we got to know ourselves for sure, what our capabilities are, and push through our own limitations, of course. But when we're looking at someone else and giving them advice on self-sacrifice and personal ambition, hedge your bets. Don't tell someone that they should go out there and own the world, rule the world, go self-sacrifice to the maximum if you don't know them. Because some people are built for it initially, and some aren't built for it initially. Maybe along the way, they'll learn how to go all in and make it make sense. But not everyone is carved from the same stone. And so I feel like I had certain talents to be able to understand self-sacrifice and personal ambition when I was a young buck and push it harder than most. I believe that everyone on this panel is kind of cut from that same stone, but not everyone is. And so, food for thought. When you're handing out advice on self-sacrifice and personal ambition, look at the person in front of you for who they are, or as best as you can understand them for who they are. Don't just give out glib, generalized advice if you think that it doesn't relate to the moment.
That is a great piece of advice. I'm gonna take that on, because I give out a lot of glib statements, and I need to tighten that up. Fran, you got any additional thoughts on what Shaun just put out?
Yeah, I appreciate Shaun very much. His guidance, and was always pushing me to keep going, and so that was one of the driving factors that, whether you know it or not, was very influential for me to keep going. So I do appreciate that, because it was really important. I think that when we think about our service, we had started this conversation about legacy of service. And we brought in these concepts of others, and we started talking about be in service to others. What have you done? What have you done for others today? Because it's important to think about ourselves and how the results of the actions on ourselves, but we always want to think about the results on others, and where can we impact others. And success, just like we know that our own success is a byproduct of others' investment in us, as well as our own hard work. Well, we have opportunities every moment of every day almost to impact others and help them be successful. And when we see that in others, and it doesn't mean we run around like a cheerleader, patting everybody we know on the back, hey, you can do it, man. Uh, you know, eh, we want to be there for others when we see value in what they're doing, and and when they're down and when they're having challenges, to be there for them, to say, hey, I might not know exactly what you're going through, but I think I know where you want to be. And I know if you just keep going, you're going to be all right. And so we have an ability to impact others in an important way every day. And then I would just, say, do it because you want to, not because you think you have to, because it won't be genuine. And so we got to be genuine in those moments.
Yeah, could not agree more. It's, actually mean what you say. I think it's very difficult for a lot of people out there, as well as myself for many years. Evan, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah. We talk about personal ambition. I think of goals, right? And I think that the relative amount of skin in the game you have as an individual in the goal is going to determine your level of acceptable or unacceptable self-sacrifice as well. And when you talk about, Fran was just talking about, doing it because you genuinely want to help those individuals, not because you think you have to. When you talk about the life of service, and a comment we've all chatted about earlier, in seeing real value, I think the life of service will teach you to find real value in people where you feel like the goal to make them better, or the goal to support them, you actually have some personal skin in that game. So then you're going to self-sacrifice to an appropriate level to achieve those goals. The balance between the two, I think is forever going to be something that we're all going to struggle chasing. And again, it goes back to the skin in the game. I think is if you have a lot of personal skin in the game on that goal, that bar of self-sacrifice versus, and the balance between your own personal ambition and that self-sacrifice is going to vary, and that takes successes and failures to figure that out, I think.
Yeah. I'm looking at this, I'm listening to you guys, and I'm looking at my question bank, and I realized that as we've been talking, I've had this question laid out exactly what we're talking about right now. So, Shaun, you got any thoughts on this particular question?
And so I think that it's a learned process, of course. How you get that correct balance between all things takes a long time. But that doesn't mean that when I was 20, I was totally screwing it up. I was still doing my best for a 20-year-old. And so that's probably the most important lesson in all of this. How do you balance? Maybe none of us ever will. But why do you balance? Now, that is a better question for me, a more impactful or more important question. Why? Why bother? Because maybe you think you've got it all figured out. Maybe you don't have to even consider these kind of questions because maybe your life is going pretty well according to you. But once you start talking to people who are running a really good program, who are successful, whatever that means to you, start looking for those successful people and then start asking yourself, are you doing a good job? And through context, you'll probably realize that there's room for improvement. Once you know there's room for improvement, then you can get back to that question of, well, why bother? Why? Not how to get the balance, but why get the balance? And so if you ask anyone who's been in the game for a long time, who has some skin in the game for a long time, they'll help you understand really quickly that the faster you can optimally and efficiently gain outcomes in all things, the sooner you'll get success. Now, when I say effectively and efficiently run your process so that you become king of the world, that'll put people off because optimal and efficient sounds like now you're an overachiever. Bro, dial it back. Slow down. You don't have to be the king of the world by the end of today, is what some people will think. I think the opposite. It's not that I want to be king of the world. It's that I want to be king of my little universe, Shaun's universe, where everything that I do, I try to do it as best as I can. So that to me is my balance. I was making my coffee this morning. Best freaking coffee I've ever made. Ever. Because I was all in on my coffee pour. And that's how I try to run my life. When I wake up tomorrow, I won't try to make a crappy cup of coffee. I'll try to make the best cup of coffee in the world. What does that even mean? It means that I'll grab a bag of coffee from my coffee shelf that I roasted 5 days ago from Kenya, an estate called Kii, K-I-I. It got air shipped, back sealed, so that it's as fresh can be, new crop. It's a bonkers cup of coffee. The one that I just finished drinking. It's nuts. But all of the process from A to Z, before I started sipping on that cup of coffee, that was me all in as I made that coffee this morning. Now, big deal. I went all in this morning and had a great cup of coffee. That is a indicator of what I've been chasing for over 2 decades in a cup of coffee. The moment that I realized that coffee tasted like crap and that wasn't going to fly with me, I was going to start pursuing better coffee. I took it all under my own control, and now I own the A to Z on it. And every year that goes by, I drink better and better coffee because I've set a goal for myself to have the best cup of coffee in the world every morning. Now, that sounds like a ridiculous attempt, but unless you're attempting, what are you even doing? Are you waking up in the morning and then realizing sometime in the afternoon that you drank your coffee? So I would say this, that for me, my balance is always pursuing betterment in everything that I do.
This, first off, awesome. Yes, and you do that. You are, and you've driven other people to do that, and it kind of exudes from you. Just as a side note, it's not like BO by any means, but when you walk into a room, there is a presence, there's a feeling, like people's heads turn. And I remember at Pegasus Jump, I haven't seen you walk up and watching everybody else go, oh, right. It's kind of hilarious. But I'm wondering, with that search, with that 20-year desire, seeking that perfect cup of coffee, I'm sure there's been points of time where that search has interfered with your own commitments or other things that you've wanted to do, or perhaps should be doing with others, or et cetera, et cetera. And I'm using coffee as an example, right? It could be time in the military. It could be seeking to be the best jiu-jitsu player ever in the world. Like, you can use it for anything, but can you think of a time where that drive, that pull towards excellence has gotten in the way of any other duties or commitments that you had? Shaun, I'm going to come right back to you. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in nearly everything that I do, my balance between what I want to accomplish and what the rest of the world surrounding me wants from me is the balance, for sure. I want to go all in. When I bought my first mountain bike, I didn't ever think that I would start to get interested in 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. And when I did my first 24-hour solo mountain bike race, I didn't ever think that I'd do 30 of them. And as I was doing those 30, I never thought that I'd be a world champion in it. So there's lots of things that I don't know on day one. But what I do know on day one is if I'm going to pick up the reins on something, I'm going to frickin' make that thing gallop. Somewhere down the road, I'm going to want to gallop that horse. I want to kick that ass. So whatever I do, it gets my best. Now, what's the downside to that? The downside is I tend to go all in. I'm not a half-asser. And so if I want to become a world champion in whatever, these kind of commitments take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of focus and a lot of sacrifice. And generally speaking, I try to mitigate that by doing whatever I have to do when my family's sleeping. So 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, at times I'd be riding my bike. My family would be sleeping. And so I try to do it that way. But in the waking hours, there were lots of times where I'd have to make sacrifices and move away from my family to go do the thing that I needed to do to chase my dream, to try to taste that success. And so it is a sacrificial pursuit. It's how much you're willing to give up of yourself and how much you're willing to give up of all those around you. That is the balance for me. And so I've done it wrong in the past in order to get what I wanted to get. And I've done it right in the past. And by right, that has sometimes held me back from getting what I wanted personally. But these are life lessons that over the decades, you find your own calibration of what you're willing to give up to get.
That's a fantastic point. Evan, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, reading the question in front of me here, Chance, can you share a time when you focus on your own personal ambitions, felt at odds with a sense of duty or commitment to others? Fran, believe it or not, we only get about 6 months of nice non-winter weather here in central Alberta. Not to say that there might be a month or two on the end of either side where it's tolerable to be outside. You can have lots of fun, but that 6 months of the year, really May through October, is also one of my busiest seasons. It's wildfire season here. And I spend a ton of time in the summer away from home for weeks on end. And I prep my family well for that, being in the military. But there are times when I miss a lot of things with my family. I miss camping trips. I miss get-togethers. I miss, you name it, just to be out on wildfires, right? And for the most part, my family understands, and they're okay with it. They understand that what I'm doing, and I'm being called upon to go and assist in these major disasters. This, for example, this past summer, the Jasper wildfire, spent a little bit of time there this summer. I had to 1 year in 2021 put my foot down, so to speak. It was the year I was getting married to my wife, and I was deployed out in British Columbia on some wildfires, and in a position that was, in a season for BC that was quite crazy. They were having a terrible wildfire season. They couldn't get resources, couldn't get people to fill positions, and I had to go to my boss essentially on the fire line and say, hey, I got to be out of here on X day. And he's like, well, what do you mean you got to be out here next day? I'm like, I'm getting married back in Alberta. And they actually wanted me to change my wedding date to stick around on a wildfire. And I had to push back a little bit and say no. So, I found in that situation, I found the line, right, where I felt at odds because I was truly torn, and I made the right decision. And my wife is probably out there listening to me say this right now, so it's probably a good thing. But I made the right decision, right? I chose my wife and my family, and getting married, and making sure that I got through. Got home, I should say, to partake in that. But I did feel at odds, right? I was leaving crews back in a really tough situation. It was a wild wildfire season, crazy fire behavior going on. We were losing communities in BC, Lytton, a couple other small communities. It was tough, and we see that kind of every summer in Western Canada in wildfire season. So I can definitely think of multiple times where I've been at odds with things that are my own personal ambition, or maybe more self-serving, versus that duty or that commitment to serve others, right? I think that the skin in the game piece, again, like I talked about, is a big driving factor on where you're going to figure out. And then obviously, getting married to your wife is going to be the line. But I can definitely think of a couple of things. How I navigate those is, I take every one of those situations kind of in stride. And when the phone rings and they tell me, hey, we got to go, we need you to come out to this wildfire and do this piece of work for us, I have to make sure my life is in order. I make sure that my normal day job, I'm ahead of the game. I've got all of my checks and balances in place. I've set time and headspace aside in wildfire season because I know the phone call's coming, right? I try and take on tasks and roles and make sure that, that I have capacity to go and lend a hand when I can. I make sure that I'm physically fit. I make sure my bag's packed every day. The phone call might come on a Sunday. It might come on a Monday, right? It might not come for the next 2 weeks, but it's coming at some point. So, that self preparation, being ready to rock and roll all the time, making sure your personal life's in check, making sure your family's got everything they need, because that the phone's going to ring at some point in time. You're going to have to run out the door and maybe be gone for a couple of weeks, right? So I guess that's how I navigate it. And then at the end of the day, you got to have those backstops and those red lines where you're like, okay, I'll do it up to a certain point, but then somebody else is relying on me. So, i.e. my family, who needs to come number one at some point, right?
At some point, for sure. And I know lots of people, and I'm sure we all do. The reason the divorce rate in the military is so high is a lot of times people don't know where that line is, and they just push it too far sometimes. Fran, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Well, I think this is the hardest part of being whether you're an entrepreneur or you're an athlete or you're in the military. How do you balance it? Because when you add complexity to your life, and when I use the term complexity, we could replace that with others. Okay, and we're no longer focused on ourself. Well, now you have to make choices, and those choices have impact. And so every decision that you make is when you're dealing with a finite resource like time. Okay, time is the one thing we can't control. We can't stop it. We can't make more of it. Um, well, now there is an inverse relationship between many of these things in life, and what we have to do is identify where are we in our life cycle of, maybe it's a project, maybe it's, our life writ large, um, and how do I need to now pull those levers that give me this balance across these different things of, maybe it's our professional career, maybe it's our family, maybe it's our outside relationships, with others and our friends, also, whether it's our health and our fitness. All of these have to be levered in a certain way that is really going to be commensurate upon what's going on in our lives and where are we. And so, what do I mean by that? Okay, well, there's going to be a time, like, for all of us, when we were probably in our early 20s, where we didn't have families, and if we had significant others, that was in early stages, and we said, I'm going to go do something for me. Yes, I have this desire to serve the nation and all this stuff, but I'm going to go do something for me. And I'm going to go into the military. I'm going to serve in these capacities, and that's where my focus is going to be. And so that lever, that bar graph for that pillar goes way up, and everything else kind of sits down. And then you fast forward, you get out, you have kids, you have a life. Well, guess what? Like, maybe that you isn't going to be so high anymore because these other factors have come into place, and now they've got to elevate on the bar graph. But for them to go up, something's got to come down. They can't all be high. Everything can't be 100%. I've tried. Trust me. If you do that, everything goes to zero really quickly. And then you're looking around in the mirror going, I got nothing. Who am I? And that's going to take a long time to get out of. So there's going to be times then where you are still going to have adjustments. And, I've had this conversation here in my house with my wife where she said, why are you staying up all night working on stuff? And I said, that's just where we are right now. It's not going to be like that forever, but it's where we are. Maybe that's 2 days, maybe it's 3 days, maybe it's a week or a month. But at some point, there has to be a reshuffling of that deck, because what you give here, you got to take from something else. And so always trying to be attuned of what is important right now. And whether that's at the micro level, this minute, the next 10 minutes, the next half an hour, well, that might impact the next day or 2 days. I mean, even as we've sat here on this conversation, I've written a list here because it's Friday afternoon, and I've got the volleyball game coming up here in a little bit that I got to go to, but I got a list of like 5 things that I didn't do this week that still have to get done. But I got volleyball and kid pickup and a number of other things, and I'm trying to think through myself, okay, well, how am I going to do all that, and when, and what matters, and what's the prioritization? So there's no right answer, but being mindful of it is the first step to starting to make decisions that are going to have impact and result. And one more thing, and I'll be quiet. Shaun talked about going all in. When we decide to do something, we have choice. We have choice. There's very few things in life where we don't have choice. Okay. And so that means that if we choose to do something, we must do it at 100%. We just must. Because if I chose to do it, why would I do it in a half-ass fashion? That's a very simple phrase, but I think it's really important to think about that for a second. Just stop and think about it. I chose to do this. I chose to go for a run. Why would I quit? Why would I not do it? Maybe I don't. And we talked about optimal and peak performance. Okay, maybe I don't run it at a 6-minute pace like I used to, but I still could go out and do it. I chose to write this report. I chose to be present at my kid's game. Just go all in. Be there. Be present. Do the best you can. It's not going to be perfect, but it might be all you have in that moment. But accept that choice.
I like it. I like it. Shaun, you got any additional thoughts on any of this?
It's what Fran said is the way it is. If that's what you've chosen to do, then frickin' do it. And you can call it do it at 100%, but some people will need to hear do it at 90%. Maybe that makes them comfortable. But for me, I'm all in on anything that I do. After this podcast, I'll go for a bike ride. And depending on my mood, and this is an important factor, of course, depending on my mood, I might click into my bike pedals and right off my driveway, go full tilt bonkers until I'm cross-eyed and I can barely breathe. And that might be 2 minutes later. I'm dreading the next hour and a half. But my mood will dictate what I'm going to do in the moment. My mood will carry me through different parts of the day in different ways. But at my core, I always know that irrespective of what my mood is, I know that I can go super deep in a split second on anything I want. Because that's what I've taught myself to do over the decades. That's what the frickin' army taught me to do. Drop everything in a split second and then go kick that ass over in the left corner. Once that's finished, which way do I have to go? Okay, it's ass kicking time. And so whether that's making a coffee or riding a bike or whatever it is, that's what I was taught to do. And by the way, that's what I like to do. And I think that that's also an important aspect of this conversation. If you haven't kicked enough ass in your life, you probably don't even know if you like it or not. But I freaking love kicking ass. I do. I love kicking my own ass. And sometimes if I kick my own ass hard enough, the outcome is I've kicked a few other asses along the way. And so I love ass kicking. And if I hadn't have engaged in ass kicking throughout my entire life, I'd probably think, what's the point? What's the point in like trying that hard? What's the point in giving it all I've got? I would probably be a guy who would be looking at someone like me and thinking, why does he even bother? Well, I was taught to bother. And I've never forgotten it. And over the years, it's only been refined more and more and more to the degree where I would feel like incomplete if I wasn't kicking some ass today. And I mean kicking a book's ass, kicking a podcast's ass, kicking a bike's ass. If some dude says something wrong to me, kicking his ass. Whatever it takes, I love kicking ass. And society as a whole, I do believe, has taken offense to the idea that we all should kick a little bit of ass every day. Maybe it's come to a point, as I see it, where it's almost offensive to try that hard. It's almost wrong to go all in. It's almost inconceivable that someone would want to give it 100%. But that's not my world. That's someone else's world. My world is kick that ass. And if you haven't tried it, try it for a while. It's fun.
I really like this. And I was thinking while you were talking, Shaun, is that one of the first things you get taught is that details matter, right? That's the very, I think one of the first things you get taught in the military, details matter. Because, a lot of people think that certain things just don't matter. Like, why are my shirts 10 by 10? And why are my bed made like that? Why does it matter that my stuff is laid out the same as everybody else? But it does. And the sad part, I think, is when we're young and we don't have that experience through life, we get into that mode of thinking where you're, we had this whole conversation. We did an entire show on being a keener last year, and how for a lot of people, they look at being a keener as a negative thing, of being, the smartest guy in the room, or the highest mark on a test, or et cetera, et cetera. You're standing out from the crowd. Where we had a conversation on being the stag versus being in the herd. Like, this is a kind of recurring theme we've talked about a lot, but I really like the fact, like, details matter, and you don't learn that until someone points it out to you. I think at least it takes someone else to point it out to you. Evan, you got any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I'll say a couple of things. I'll give Fran some time because I know he's got to bounce here soon. But I think that death match that gentleman challenged Shaun to set things in motion that can't be undone. But at the end of the day, listening to the guys talk, a couple of things I picked out is I think people have the wrong perception when we're saying do 100% in everything you do. I think people think that means every single interaction you have in the day, everything that you come across, we want you to jump out and figure it out and do 100% on it. No, the choice piece that Fran talked about is what matters. We all only have so much to give, right? You have to balance all of these things in your life, but the things you choose to do, you have to do those all out. Otherwise, you're going to get stagnant. You're going to get left behind. You're not going to fail. You're not going to succeed. You're not going to do anything, right? So if anybody listening is like, oh, these guys are crazy, man. They're telling me, when somebody hits me in a T-bone accident, I got to get out and do it 100%. You know what I mean? If I'm going to get in a car accident, I better drive that thing off a cliff. It's like, no, that's not what we're talking about, right? We're talking about the things you choose to do in life, those things that matter to you, those goals you set, and you might not even know what they are yet, but do it 100%, and you'll be surprised at the outcomes 99% of the time, whether it's a good surprise or a bad surprise. And if you're paying attention, you'll learn from both.
I love that. Could not agree more. Do it, smashing a car 100%. I love that. Fran, you got what do you got?
Yeah, this is I think hard to say much more than what what Shaun and Evan here said. They I love kicking ass. Oh, man, that's going to stick with me for the rest of the day. There's just something to be learned about it. There's something about working hard. That's what that's how I would kind of rephrase. I would Canadianize Shaun's comments here, and what he's talking about is working hard and just getting after it and doing everything you can and putting together a good plan, and then finding ways to improve that plan and finding ways to improve yourself and your position. One of you talked about the details matter. This is little things. You can do little things every day that will become habit and routine that may seem innocuous, but actually set a solid foundation for bigger decisions. I got three kids. Our house is a disaster, like 20 hours a day. Okay. But every night before I go to bed, the toys get picked up. Now, most of the time it's me picking them up, pissed off because the kids didn't do it. But we don't go to bed. I don't go to bed with a dirty kitchen, with plates in the sink, with toys all over the place. Because to me, that's foundational. Be orderly. Set the foundation for the next day to start over, and hopefully teach some discipline in my children to do these things themselves, right? But those little things are important. When I work with athletes in locker rooms, we talk about simple things like keep an orderly locker room. Don't walk by trash, because if you walk by trash, then you leave weights on the floor. And if you leave weights on the floor, you skip reps. And if you skip reps, you skip sets. And when you skip sets, you lose games. But if you pick up trash on the floor, other people see you pick up trash on the floor, They pick up trash on the floor. You put your weights away. So does everybody else. You do all your reps. So does everybody else because they saw you do it, and you win games. So those little things are really important to drive home foundational aspects of success. There's nothing special about being a special operator. There really isn't. And too many times, we started this conversation talking about this. Too many times we put special operators on this pedestal, like we put professional athletes. Tom Brady is a regular dude who just kicked ass every day at 100%. There's no difference. Tier 1 operators in Delta are regular dudes who, some of them are weirdos. Tom Brady's a weirdo sometimes. He'll tell you that himself. Watch some of the videos. But they're the best at what they do because all they do is focus to be 100% all the time on what they chose to go do. And they do the little things so when the big decision comes, it's flawless to make that decision. That's what I would leave this conversation with.
Bam. Leaving with a mic drop.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, I don't know, get out of your car and kick someone's ass, maybe.
There you go.
Don't do that. Don't do that. And if you do, Shaun told you to do that. I didn't tell you to do that.
I love it.
That's illegal here in America.
It's legal pretty much everywhere, I think.
I don't know. You guys live in the boonies up there.
Yeah.
If it's a bear, it's not illegal.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't recommend if you hit a bear with a car, don't get out and try to beat the bear up if it's still alive. I'm just going to say that's probably going to make it angry more than anything. So don't recommend that either. But Fran, really do appreciate it. Thanks for being here with us, and go watch a volleyball game. Enjoy yourself.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me. Good seeing you. See you soon. Thanks for everything.
Great to meet you.
Absolutely. Shaun, gonna come back to you. Any thoughts?
No real thoughts to add other than just to reinforce the reinforcement of go all in on anything that you do. There's no downside to going all in on something. If you can manage your timeline, if you've got good time management skills, if you've got good prioritization skills, so work on the thing that's most important first, perhaps, and assign a certain amount of time to accomplish that. And if you don't accomplish it in that time, then you get to make a decision. Do you add more time to accomplish it, or do you bypass it and come back to it another time? Prioritization and time management. Move through your day accordingly. But whatever you're doing, whichever priority you've chosen to do and however much time you've given it, frickin' give it your all. So if I'm reading a book, I give it my all. And by that, it doesn't mean I require burpees while I'm doing it. It just means that I set myself up comfortably with good lighting, a glass of water or coffee, so that I can sit and not be disturbed every 3 seconds to go and do another thing. I set myself up in my morning chair in order to read my morning books that are laid out for me by me to do tomorrow. And so you can set yourself up to be successful, or you can set yourself up to be unsuccessful. It takes thought to be successful. It takes no thought to be unsuccessful. So by choosing to do something, is there a downside? As society trained us to believe that trying hard is wrong or going all in is wrong? Because I kind of get the sense that for a little while now, it's been sort of doing your best has almost been diminished to some degree, where a lot of society or a chunk of society doesn't appreciate someone trying really, really hard in all things. That's what I've observed. What do you guys think?
I 100% agree. And I was thinking down this line is the fact that for other people to succeed, it has been kind of built into our system now, is that if for us to succeed, someone has to lose. And I don't think that's accurate, but I think that's part of the system, which has been part of the structure of our society, is that for somebody else, for you to win, somebody else has to lose. And so that means that there are that many more losers to winners. Therefore, the losers are outweighing the winners when the people are saying like, yeah, man, just try hard, do your best. Well, there's a lot of people out there who didn't try their best and are recognizing that they're not going to win. So they just don't want other people to win. At least that's where I'm going with it. Evan, you got thoughts on this?
Yeah. I think when we look at society as a whole, I don't disagree with Shaun. I think that the vocal minority definitely, especially today with the platform that they've been given, with increased access to things like social media, and they can get their message out there a lot easier. I think we're definitely hearing it more and more and more and more. I like to believe, and I'm probably wrong, but I'm an optimist, that there is a bigger chunk of society that encompasses two groups, and that's us, the folks that sit in these podcasts and the folks that think the way we do, and then this chunk of society that's quiet and on a fence. And it takes people like us. It takes people bringing these messages forward louder, or as loud, I want to say louder, than the vocal minority that think that for us to succeed, it means somebody has to fail. Maybe it does. Right? Maybe it does. For me to succeed, somebody has to fail. But I'm going to tell you that if that's the case, it's because that other person's choosing to fail, and it's not on me. Right? It's not on me. And I'm going to have my ambitions. I'm going to work towards those ambitions with everything that I have, because I've chosen those are my goals, and I know what my why is. If those people haven't chosen their goals, and they don't know what their why is, that's not on me. But I'm going to focus my time and energy on that third group of people that's quiet and on the fence. And I'm going to try and I'm not going to drag them along with me. If they decide to come, that's great. There are people in my life that I will drag along with me every day, because I also understand that people have good days and they have bad days, and I'm there to pick up my people on their bad days, just like they pick me up on my bad days. But we only have so much to give, and we only have so much time and energy. And if we focus them on the right people, I think we're going to make our movement a lot bigger.
Yeah, I 100% agreement with that. Shaun, you got any additional points?
That was great. It's rare that I feel like I've got nothing else to add. I don't have anything else to add, but I have this compulsion to add something. And so I'll say this, that though I agree with everything that Evan just said, I'm still not satisfied with everything that he just said, because somehow I feel like there's a way to do it better. There's always a way to do it better. And I feel compelled to want to do it better for the team. And so that is kind of an important distinction, that we can want all of the successes for ourselves. We can figure out the balance for ourselves. But at the end of the day, we're all going to die. And what did we leave behind? Our own little personal wants and needs? Or did we leave behind a legacy? And I'm not living my life to leave a legacy behind. I'm leading my life that maybe will leave a legacy behind through my efforts, through the way I chose to live my life. It might influence others through its legacy, but I'm not trying to build a life of legacy to inspire others. My actions might inspire others, but I'm not always trying to inspire everyone around me. Sometimes I'm just trying to inspire myself. And that in and of itself will inspire others. That simple statement that I just put out just now, that I'm not always inspired, but my actions might inspire others, even though I'm not inspired in the moment. Just as Evan said, I do believe that there is a third group out there sitting on the fence, trying to figure out what side of the fence they want to be on, quietly questioning a lot of things. And And it doesn't mean that anything I say or Evan says or Chance says is going to perhaps provide such an amount of clarity that, bam, life is now figured out. These little bits and pieces of wisdom that you might pick up in podcasts or on the sidewalk in a coffee shop, all these little gems, we're supposed to gather them, make sense of them, and push forward in our own personal journeys. And if you choose well, if you put the wisdom together well, just by actioning all of that on your personal life, you will impact others all around you through tiny little ripples. People that you don't even know will pick up what you're putting down or will see what you're doing. And so I know that to be true because I get hit from time to time in my social media DMs, and people will say things to me that I barely remember myself saying. And so they will drop a quote or they'll let me know I said something on that one day. And these perhaps were even just tiny little moments for me that I barely remember, but it had a massive impact on them that day for whatever reason. And my words might not have been so frickin' magnificent that they should have had that impact. But sometimes in life, the right person saying the right thing at the right time will make all the difference in the world. I don't walk around every day trying to spit out magnificent wisdom. I just walk around, do the best I can in my life. And I don't ever worry about trying to throw a hook into everyone else's mind every single second of the day. I just try to do my best in my day. And if you do your best, you might find that weeks, months, years later, someone will hit you up on the sidewalk and say, man, that one time you said that one thing, that changed the trajectory of my life, bro. I wanted to thank you for it. That'll happen, guaranteed. So just do your best, lead by example, live a good life, a righteous life, and people around you will pick up what you're putting down.
Yeah, I got this this I picked up the line "Hope is not a plan of action" from Fran, and I've used it since he said it, and it's one of those little lines that I just love. But to your point, Shaun, and I think this is a really good place to kind of wrap it up, is the fact that if you use hope as an action, like you use hope through action, I should say, that is what takes you down the distance. Because, as we've said, perfection is not a thing. You can't achieve what is excellence in your relentless pursuit of it. But you're still going to hope for it. They're still going to work for it. You're still going to, through action, hope to one day affect the world to leave that legacy without just sitting around hoping for it, if you know what I mean. Like, I think that's the difference, is that you're providing hope through action rather than just thinking about hope. And I think, unless Evan, you got any other thoughts on this before we wrap her up?
I'm good, man. Wrap it up.
All right, let's I think we can shut her down for the afternoon. And thank you guys again. I'm going to thank Randy for being here, and Fran for being here, and Evan, thank you for sticking it out through the whole thing. And always good to chat with you, Shaun. This was just such an awesome conversation. Any final thoughts? Anything still burning in the back of your brain over anything that we've talked about, including the legacy of service? Evan, I'm going to hit you back. Anything at all?
What I'll say is these conversations that you guys facilitate on the collective are always amazing. And if anybody watching is on the fence on whether they want to get into a life of service or not, just wrap up this entire conversation of what a life of service is going to do for you in the rest of your life. We went from starting off talking about how service impacts us, and we've gone through so many rabbit holes that all matter till the end of this conversation. But a life of service is something that's beautiful. If you choose to do it and you do it 100%, you're going to get so many things out of it. It impacts every facet of my life every day, positively, every single day.
Love it. Shaun, any final thoughts?
inferred throughout the podcast. It may have been mentioned to some small degree, but I want to wrap it up by stating that the guests on the panel, or in fact, all of us on the panel, we've had long lives of service. But because we've been in service for a long time, we have a certain understanding or perspective on what that means. And our perspectives aren't so well informed that it diminishes anyone else's other perspectives on service. So if you've never served your country, as an example, you can serve your community in a soup kitchen or in a other capacity. I mean, heck, you can look after Boy Scouts for a year and serve through some charitable organization or volunteer organization so that you get a sense of service within your community. It's a great way to understand your community, and it's a great way to understand yourself. So no one has to go out there and sign on the dotted line and think that they're committing to a 20-year military career or a ... career. You don't have to do that to serve. What you do have to do is go out and determine how you're going to help your fellow man. That is service.
Bam. I got nothing else to add. That was just such a fantastic conversation, and I'm going to make some really cool clips out of this. I'm going to tell you that. There's some good lines in here. So again, thank you guys very much for the convo. Hopefully we'll see all y'all. Well, Evan, I'm going to get you on again because I love the way you think, and can't wait to see y'all next week. So as we all continue to learn, build, and grow, we'll see you next time. Chimo.